always a nice meeting to see all the research going on in GSLIS. So this is a paper that Chancellor Kim was sitting there. Hello, I'm Craig Evans. Craig, where are you? There, back there. And we put together, we are presenting this at the XBISM conference, the sense I think for international conference for the web and social media. It's actually IEEE. I'm sorry. Okay, so does this work? Oh, beautiful. So what are we talking about here? In the upper left, on the upper left, you see two. You see two graphs. This and this are both generated. Both are co-publication relationships. People authoring papers together. They are both generated from the same year and the same data. This one is correctly disambiguated using pretty much 98 to 99.
We need the mic for the broadcast. Thank you.
Test. Yeah. Oh, really? I have to hold that too? But,
right.
Okay. A lot of stuff. Fine. Oh. Total overload here. All right. So those are two social networks representing co-publications between scholars. Correctly disambiguated, this is what the truth really is. Same data. Incorrectly disambiguated, actually almost no disambiguation happening. Looks bigger, more collaborative, more dense, more cohesive. That's what we're talking about. How much of an impact does correct entity resolution make for large-scale social network data? Why is that? Because we have, for example, people like Mark Newman and Mark Newman. Those are two different people. He's a physicist at the University of Michigan. He's in the iSchool at the University of Michigan. Same name, same affiliation. When that happens, when you don't correctly pull them apart, they are merged into one node. That node all of a sudden has more collaborators, those of both of them, and so on and so forth. So this whole notion of graph-level entity resolution involves two challenges. One of them is merging the different references to one and the same person, who might be indexed with different spellings, for example. The counter effect to that is splitting apart nodes that actually represent multiple people who just happen to have the same name, right? So those are the two things that we need to address. Highly accurate algorithmic solutions are available for both of these problems. An expert on this is Svetlana Trovik, who is sitting right there and who has done a lot of work in research and on that, and also has publicly available resources for that, which we are actually using for this. Our question is not so much how can we make those algorithms better. Our question is, does it matter? What's the payoff from the, sorry, I did not mean it in a sarcastic way, but if we make those algorithms better, like say you get $1 million from NSF to increase entity resolution by 2%, is there actually a payoff for that? Does that matter? Is there an impact in the network in the end? That's our question here, and that's an open question, so that's why we are working on that. By the way, there is this website called How Many of Me? In the US, there are 562 Mark Newmans, and we also looked up the authors on this paper. There are 416 Craig Evans. It's probably good, Craig, for your citation index, I know. It's awful. It's only one Jana Diesner and one Chancellor Kim in the US, so we are not so lucky. All right, so we are using two data sets to measure these effects. One is a large-scale email data collection that became available as part of the federal investigation into Enron. That's about 500,000 real-world email data points over 4 years. I originally started cleaning that data set when it came out, basically mapping email addresses to people, to actual people's names. So we know who these people are. There were a lot of additional data and document files made available during that federal investigation from which we know who those people actually are. So we mapped a lot of people. In the end, we can now run analysis on these data, not in terms of email addresses, but we know what people we are talking about. And we went through this process in several stages. I did an initial cut on this. Then some of the students in Kathy Blake's SODA class were further refining the data. Craig Evans did a lot of work on that. And then everybody in my 590 network analysis class also did a homework on that. If you are here, raise your hand. Who's here from my 590? Very good. We can all thank those people for making a contribution to science. Thank you, guys. From these data, we basically generated networks. The first one is raw data. If you paid no attention to data pre-processing and are on the camp that says, the bigger the better, and big data will wash out some of those errors, this is what you would get. That's the raw network data. We generated a second data point which considers stage 1 and 2 of cleaning and refinement. And then we did a third network that considers stages 1, 2, and 3, more to come. Going from the worst case to the best case we have so far. We also used a data set from Medline that Chinsak was putting together. This uses co-publication data where the task is not so much consolidation of different references to a single person, but pulling apart people who happen to have the same name. And here we are using 4 years of data, all the articles that involve the mesh term brain. We had about 100,000 articles, and we built 3 networks. For the first one, we used algorithmic disambiguation that Vettel is providing. That's the best we can do. We used the all-initial-based disambiguation, which basically uses the initial of your first and middle name, so those 2 people would actually be different people. And in many indexing systems just use first initial-based disambiguation, so they only use the initial of the first name, and in these 2 cases, those 2 people would be the same. Okay? So we go from best case we have to worst to as bad as it can be. So those 2 approaches are very common. Same here. This is very common that people don't bother with this. It's very tedious. This takes a lot of time doing that, and a lot of resources. And again, is it worth it? So here are the results. For Enron, we moved from left to right in terms of worst case, better, best, and here it's kind of the opposite. This is the best case we have, and this is the worst case we have. This is a plotting of a lot of the standard network metrics. How cohesive is a graph? How prominent are individuals in comparison to others? How integrated is it? How many different components are there? Those are standard metrics that people look at, and if we had more than 10 minutes, I would walk you through all of them. But I'll keep it short and say that the amount of pre-processing we do has a huge impact on these metrics. This is, you see in brackets always the ratio in change. Number of components changes to 100%. Density, how many of the possible relations are there, changes by 30%. Same for co-publishing, even worse. So most of the network metrics get heavily biased by this tiny little pre-processing step, to a level where if we plot nodal degree distribution in a log-log scale for in degree of email data and for the co-publishing network nodal degree, we get actually very different impression of what topology might be underlying the generation of these graphs. These, I'll quickly explain this example. Here we see the blue line, this is the correctly disambiguated data. The red and black line are the incorrectly disambiguated data. People often assume social networks to have a power law distribution, which is caused by a very social normal principle that says that people like to hang out with people who are very popular, preferential attachment. If we look at the red and black curve, that suggests much more of a preferential power law thingy going on, whereas if we look at the true distribution data, it's actually not supported so much. So that's a big problem. If we identify a false topology, then that's a pretty huge bias. All right, we also looked at key people. The left-hand side is Enron. The key player analysis, who are the most important, prominent, salient, and the most well-connected people. In Enron, that doesn't change so much. Sally Beck, we see in each of those things popping up. If we look at the co-publishing data, this is correct. Those are the actually truly most prominent people, whereas in the incorrectly disambiguated data, it's this. And that's completely different. There is no single data point that the correctly disambiguated data and those with initial-based disambiguation would have in common. So why? Because a lot of Asian names and a lot of Asian names heavily overlap. So here you get a very biased view on what's going on. All right, in summary, does disambiguation matter? It matters a big deal. Big data does not fix that problem. For email data, we see that missing to do this sort of correction and deduplication makes a organizational communication network look more dense, less dense, less integrated than it actually is, maybe even falsely suggesting a need for additional collaboration, more meetings, more coordination, which is not true. For co-publishing, we see that if we use commonly used yet heavily incorrect disambiguation methods, a science sector can look more productive and more integrated and more cohesive than it is. individual authors look more productive and more diversified than they actually are, which might underestimate the need for collaboration and for research funding. And that's funded by KISTI and some other units, and thank you very much.
So we're spot on time. So we have a minute or two to have a question for Dr. Yeah, we do. We have Yeah, we're right on time. And then Elizabeth, if you can get ready for your talk. Any questions for Dr. Diesner? We have time for one. Don't be shy. Kathy, Dr. Blake.
Oh, good. A great example of why you need to consider how the data was generated. Sorry, thank you.
Yeah, we're mic bound, so because we're broadcasting.
Just to repeat for
Yeah,
the
please.
folks. So I love your project because it really illustrates how important it is to consider how the data was generated. So I guess my question to you is, if you could reconcile anything else in the Enron collection, would you continue to push forward on people's names, or would you focus on something else in that data set?
I mean, so yes, this is like parallel processing now. We are still doing that, and I'm trying to keep this going as a homework exercise in my courses, and there's intercodal reliability measured, and people learn something useful from that and all that. But we are also looking much more into the content of email data now, and we are currently working on a paper with Craig on using content analysis to tag graph data, directed graph data with a valence of edges, and use that for testing for structural balance in graphs, which I'm totally excited about. So it's a mixture of a lot of things going on. But now that we have this correct resource, there are a lot of things we can do, and we want to make this open for everybody so that people can use this for their work.
Illinois.